The problem, as Emerson sets it up, after the obligatory sort of "we need a national literature" kind of opening, is that we as modern people have become separated from our manness. We can possibly pardon or at least overlook temporarily the sexism of the language, but at the same time, I think he means largely everyone. But our manness. He wants man thinking. That's what he wants. He doesn't just want a guy who's a plumber, a guy who's a teacher, a guy who's a mechanic. We oftentimes, and we still do this today, think about this, first thing we do when we meet somebody is ask them, what do you do for a living? Rather than asking them, what is your approach to living? What is your philosophy of life? How do you live your life? We don't ask that. It's a big question, and I guess it would take a long time for people to answer. But the first thing we want to do is to kind of cubbyhole people according to their occupation. And frequently, there's a kind of a snarky aspect to that. What we're really asking in a way, in a backhanded kind of way, is how much money do you make? And so he really wants to get away from that. That's, to him, a product of the Industrial Revolution. Remember, he's a romantic. They're not really keen on the Industrial Revolution to a large extent. And so what he wants is not a division of labor. He wants a unification of labor within each person. He wants each person to be able to be self-sufficient, not to say, well, I specialize in this little bitty thing that I do. I put cogs on machines, and the machines go into other machines that go into this, and this. He believes that this is a really awful thing. His great quote from this is, "This original unit," meaning each individual person, the individual, sacred as he or she may be, this original unit, this fountain of power, that's everybody, you, me, everybody, okay, is a fountain of power, has been so distributed to the multitudes, has been so minutely subdivided and peddled out, that it is that it is split into drops. The state of society is one in which the members have suffered amputation from the trunk and strut about so many walking monsters, a good finger, a neck, a stomach. So what he's getting at is we're missing out on what life has to offer because we specialize so much. We don't venture into other areas, other occupations, other lines of work, other fields. And if you're going to go into the field of education, please have your students read this, because my goodness, this is what we're doing right now. Especially when we get rid of the idea of a core curriculum providing a broad-based liberal arts education. I mean, that's where we get liberal education from, the notion that we don't want people just to study one thing. And we see students come into academia, the academic world every day who say, I just want to study my nursing courses. I don't want to take all those other things. Or when they say something horrible like, I just want to get my prerequisites out of the way, right? Can you imagine Plato saying, okay, you're in my philosophy class. Biggest thing you need to do is get this sucker out of the way. Get my English out of the way. Out of the way for what? Emerson would have a hissy over that, and rightly so. Because what it's doing is it's saying, I just want to be known for one incredibly narrow facet of myself, and that is that I do X for a living. He's much less concerned with what you do for a living as how you live. And that's what he's trying to get at. Trying to shake them up. And of course, this is a college. Guess what they're doing? They're preparing, even then, people for the workplace or for some profession. Although their emphasis on work and employment after college was a whole lot less than ours is now. It seems to be the only reason people do go to college now. Some of the main influences the scholar receives in his education, he enumerates those. First, nature, of course. Nature is the biggest influence the scholar receives in education, even though colleges, he says, schools, aren't doing that. Nature is to the soul as print is to the seal. Now that's an interesting sort of analogy there. Think it through and see what the implications of it are, but it's a really fascinating thing. So that when he says, know thyself and study nature are one maxim, it's because you're a participant in it. You're part of it. Nature is to the soul as print is to the seal. Okay? There's this sort of symbiotic relationship with it. Nature is where we go and get our education from. It's the fount of education, at least here materially it is. The past is a marvelous influence. He does not denigrate books. He's not saying, just because he said in nature that we build the sepulchers of the past and so on and so forth, he's not saying that books are terrible. He's a great reader, a voracious reader, believes that books are there to inspire, but Each age must write its own books. This is one of the greatest quotes, and I think it bears repeating, especially if you have students. Meek young men grow up in libraries believing it their duty to accept the views which Cicero, which Locke, which Bacon have given, forgetful that Cicero, Locke, and Bacon were only young men in libraries when they wrote these books. Very important. He's really trying to shake these guys up and say, you can be a Cicero. Oh, how dare you say someone could be a Cicero? Somebody had to have Cicero. Cicero's mama didn't know he was going to be that great probably when he was born. So who knows what you're capable of? We can create even greater philosophy, literature, science than we've seen in the past. This is America. We can do this. Moments of illumination, like the transparent eyeball situation, those are brief and they're rare. They're to be relished, enjoyed, and learned from. But in between those rare, brief moments of transcendent illumination, reading is what you do, right? I mean, that's secondhand. It's not first-hand experience, it's secondhand. But in between the times of that first-hand spiritual experience, then the best thing you can do is read what others have experienced as well. The third thing, contemplation and action, very important influence on the scholar. He sees contemplation, that is thought, action, which is doing in the real world, like inhaling and exhaling, the ebb and flow of the sea, day and night. These two things need to alternate. You can't be contemplating and acting at the same time. You contemplate in preparation for action. Once you act, it's time to contemplate what you did, how it fits into your world philosophy, and how to prepare yourself for the next action that you may have to take in life. The duties of the scholar, that's the third area really that he covers, and the primary duty is self-trust. If it's true that we are part and particle of God, then trusting ourselves is the same thing as trusting God. We're trusting the God within us, according to him. He says, we've listened too long to the courtly muses of Europe. That's a famous, famous line there. The spirit of the American freeman is already suspected to be timid, imitative, tame. Public and private avarice make the air we breathe thick and fat. The scholar is decent, indolent, complacent. Okay, and he wants to change that. He wants to shake it up. We've tried to be Euro imitators for too long. Stop trying to be European imitators. Stop embracing Locke. Stop embracing these guys, and start developing our own philosophy, our own way of life. Because the country was set up to change the world. How can we do that if our culture is derivative?